On page 21, we are looking at some problems that involve fractions. And so let's take a look here. I think the less you rely on your calculator on this page, the better. These should be done with mental math as much as possible. 4/12 equals how many thirds? So they want me to take the fraction 4/12 and reduce it down to thirds. Now you can solve it as a proportion. You could solve it by reducing a fraction. But here's the best way, in my opinion, to show you how to do this problem. How do you get from 12 down to 3? You're breaking down, so it's either subtraction or division. And I know if I divide by 4, that would give me 3. So I can do that on top, and that will give me 1. So the answer here is B as in Bravo, 1/3. 6/8 equals how many quarters? Quarter is 4. So to get from 8 down to 4, you can divide by 2. And if you do that on top as well, you will end up with 3. So I like C as in Charlie right here. I do want to call your attention to this. You must use the same number top and bottom. This is what I used to call for my students a special 1. 2/2 is equal to 1. 4/4 is equal to 1. So it must be the same number, top and bottom. Which of the following fraction pairs are equivalent fractions? Well, let's look at 1/4 and 1/2. If both of them have a 1 on the top, they cannot have different numbers on the bottom. So those are not equal. If both of them have a 4 on the bottom, they would have to have the same number on the top. So those are not equal. 1/4 and 4/12. Now you can reduce 4/12 to get 1/3. I want to show you another way. You can use the cross product test, where 4 times 4 is 16 and 1 times 12 is 12, and those are not equal. So those fractions are not equal. 1/4 and 8/32. This is it. You could reduce 8/32 down to a fourth, or you can do the cross product rule, where you get 32 is equal to the other cross product, 32. So that tells me that the two fractions are equal. So this is D as in delta. Which fraction represents 8/16 with the lowest common denominator? So let me show you something. I could reduce this by 2. 2 into 8 is 4. 2 into 16 is 8. And then this would go lower. I know it'll go by 4, but I want to show you something here. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. And it'll go yet again by 1 and then 2. So 1/2 is what I'm looking for. But you probably already realize that I could have reduced this whole thing by 8. 8 into 8 is 1. 8 into 16 is 2. I wanted to show you that so that I can tell you a little bit of vocabulary here. This 8 is called the greatest common factor. when I was teaching students who were just learning fractions, I would tell them the bigger the bubble, the better. That is the greatest common factor. And you may also notice if you multiply this 2 times this 2 times this 2, you will get the biggest bubble. You'll get an 8. So you can use a 2. You will get to the same answer. I had a student once who reduced everything by 2, 3, and 5. He just did not know about the greatest common factor. He was not going to get that. But he got the right answer. So I left him alone. He could reduce by 2 faster than a lot of students could figure out the 8. So if that works for you, use it. It is okay, and you will get the right answer. All right, number 45 says to express 12 over 16 in quarters. So we're bringing that down to fourths. And so this is where we're going to need our special 1. And I'll have to figure out what am I going to divide by. To get from 16 down to 4, I'm dividing by 4. So I have to do the same thing on top, and I would get 3/4. D as in delta. What is the denominator of 24/32? If you know your vocabulary, you'll get this one right. The denominator is down. It's the bottom number. And that is D as in delta. Express 12 over 16 in terms of eighths. So we're breaking down by 2. And we do it on the top to get 6. I know that's not lowest terms, but they told me to go to the eighths. So that's A as in alpha. Which of the following measurements is smallest? So we have a half. I'm going to put that right here. We have 2/16. We have 4/12. And we have 12/64. Now, there are several ways that you could do this. My first inclination would be to get a common denominator, but that may be a little harder than it looks. So let's go ahead and reduce to lowest terms. This would come down to 1/8. This would come down to 1/3. And this would come down to, that would reduce by 4, so 3/16. Is that right? 4 into 12, 3. 4 into 64, 16. Yes. So that's a little bit easier to compare. If you know, well, if all of them had a 1 on top, it would be a little bit easier to do. I'll show you the way that I would do this in just a second, but I'm going to not cheat here. They're not going to make it easy for me. So let's use least common denominator. I'm going to start with my biggest denominator, and that's 16, and I'm going to start listing multiples. 16 times 2 is 32. 16 times 3 is 48. And I think I've got a match. Let's move to the next biggest one. So we have 8, we have 16, we have 24, 32, 40, and 48. So I'm going to stop that line. I know 2 will work with 48 because 48 is an even number. So the question is, will 3 work with 48? And it will. Without listing all the factors, I'm going to tell you that, well, let me just do it. I'm being lazy. 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27. I'm just adding 3 each time. 30, 33, 36, 39, 42, 45, 48. That is my least common denominator. Each one of these will go into 48. And once you see them in terms of 48, you can tell the smallest fraction. This is not the way I would do this. I'm going to show you my way, but this is the way I should be showing you. 16 into 48 goes 3 times. 3 3s are 9. 3 into 48 goes 16 times for 16 on top. 8 into 48 goes 6 times. And 2 into 48 goes 24 times. We're looking for the smallest one. And so that's going to be 2/16. If you know this in your head, don't go through all this. But here's the way I would do it. And I would cheat. I would use my calculator. 1/2 is the same as 0.5, right? Two 16ths, we know that that's 1/8. That's 0.125. 4 twelfths is 1/3, so that's 0.33, repeating. And 12 64ths is 3/16. This one I do not know, so I'm going to use my calculator. That would be about, it's going to be close to 1/3. So let's do 3 divided by 16 is, it wasn't close to 1/3. It's close to 1/4, sorry. 0.1875. So the smallest of these choices would either be this 0.1 or this 0.1, and 0.12 is smaller than 0.18. So that's the way I would do that, especially if I had a calculator. I wouldn't waste time going through all that. But it's a good problem to think through. Okay. Which of the following measurements is the largest? Now this one, they were a little bit nicer to me because these will all give me a pretty quick common denominator. We have 1/2, 2/8, 4/16, and 28/64. All of these will go into 64. So let's build these up. And to build up, you either have to add or multiply. And in this case, I'm going to be multiplying. This one doesn't need to be built up. It already is. 16 into 64 is 4, and 4 4s are 16. 8 into 64 is 8, and 8 2s are 16. 2 into 64 is 32, and that would be 32/64. So the biggest one is the 1/2. If you wanted to use the decimal route, you would have 0.5, 0.25, another 0.25, and then 28/64. I know that will simplify down, but I'm going to use my calculator because this video is getting incredibly long. 0.4375. So the largest one in this group is the 1/2. If you have a calculator, that decimal way may be the easiest way. But either way gets you A as in alpha. Another test of equivalency. Which of the following fraction pairs are equivalent fractions? I know it's not this one. Same number on top would mean same number on bottom. 1/8 and 2/16. I like this one because 2/16 would reduce to 1/8. I could also show you that 8 times 2 is 16, and so is 1 times 16. So that's the answer. 1/8 and 3/9. Use the cross product test to get 24. And on this cross, you get 9. Those are not the same thing. And then 1/8 and 8/32. 8/8 are 64. 1 times 32 is 32. And those are not the same cross product. So B, as in Bravo, is the answer.